It's a good thing I'm better at NodeRED than juggling. Let's get started. Hey guys, today we're going to take all of the Aqara sensors into DIY automation with NodeRED. These are Aqara ZigBee sensors, and I've talked about a couple of ZigBee devices from Aqara before. You can watch first of all a Aqara 2-in-1 IP camera and the ZigBee hub and how it performs with some of the sensors, and then you can watch the latest switches. There is one no neutral and one with live and neutral available with the ZigBee protocol, which means you can either use them in an Aqara ecosystem or you can use them directly with a CC coordinator. Today, however, I'm going to take all the Aqara sensors, put them into NodeRED and show you how you can take advantage of these. Just bear in mind, this is not a pairing guide or flashing guide for CC2531 or whatever coordinating you have. I've already have those guides, so if you're not sure how to add ZigBee devices to your network or how to flash your adapter, just take a look at the description. I'm gonna link those two articles for you. There's also associated video probably flashing in a card there. All latest ZigBee Aqara sensors, they actually support ZigBee 3.0, and if you want to use them, you can either use ZigBee coordinator with stack 1.0 or 3.0 depending on what hardware you're running with. I'm running CC2531. I know it's an old coordinator by any standards right now, but I've actually flashed it with 1.2 and 3.0 coordinator software and firmware, and it was working just fine. Now the pairing instructions for every sensor from Aqara is the same. Hold the button for 5 seconds, see the LED flash, and it will join your network. Since I'm not going to cover pairing of individual sensors, that's all the same, let's focus on the features. First, it's the motion sensor from Aqara. It's a quite neat little sensor. It's not too big. It comes with this fancy stand that you can use if you want to, and it actually has two functions. Apart from reporting occupancy, it also reports luminosity. It's interesting because thanks to that you'll be able to see how bright it's outside and perhaps specify different conditions of it. Now Aqara promises up to 2 years battery life on ZigBee, so it should be serving you for a long time. Moving on, there is a water leak sensor, and this is the first time me playing with this. Now, in all honesty, as much as I appreciate what these devices can actually do, there is a couple of problems with it. First, the sensor has to be properly flooded in order to respond, which means, well, by that time there's going to be some damage done. And obviously sensing alone, it's not going to solve all the problems and prevent you from damage. You have to have some sort of connected valve to cut off the water supply. Now, with this, I'm actually planning to print an adapter for sensors like this to make them better at detecting leaks and responding quicker, so you could actually deploy some of them and make sure your house is never flooded. But looking at the sensor, it doesn't have a physical buttons and it's been made watertight, which means it's supposed to report when it's covered in water. You know, it makes sense. Now the button is hidden under the logo and there is a LED as well, so if you press the button for a couple of seconds you'll see that flashing. That means the sensor is ready to be linked. Detection happens when those two metal screws actually contact are submerged in water, and yeah, those two are responsible for detecting the moisture. And a side note, this is a conductive corrosion detection, which means try to keep these contacts as dry as possible, otherwise they might actually corrode. Next up on my list is temperature and humidity sensor, and you're actually getting 3 of metrics because there is a pressure as well inside. So you'll be able to monitor your temperature, you'll be able to monitor pressure and humidity. It's a good idea to place sensors like this away from windows or radiators and kind of keep it on the eye level so you would get adequate temperature reading for each room. I have several of this kind of sensors in my house, which are basically reporting on my smart heating. Smart heating is one of the biggest projects I've been running for 3 years right now, iterating every year. And if you want to get to know more information about how I'm running my home with a $5 switch, then there's a video there for you. Another new sensor that I've not played before with is the vibration sensor. Now this is not just vibration sensor, it actually comes with a couple of different modes. It detects tilt, it detects also drops, so you can use it in a different way. I'm actually trying to use this vibration sensor with a dishwasher. After me posting about connecting not so smart washing machine to, well, to my network, you can watch this video here, some of you suggested that I should use vibration sensor instead. So I keep experimenting with these and I'll post you soon about my results. And lastly, we have a door and window sensor. You know, those sensors that will make sure that the doors or windows are closed and let you know if something happened to them. Now, this is much smaller and it uses a different battery than the sensors behind me. This uses CR1632, so bear that in mind. But it's a very small sensor and shouldn't be really visible if you mount it on the window or next to a door. When installing one of these, do pay attention because the orientation of the sensor and orientation of the magnet matters to get the best possible detection. And if you have two of these, this video will show you how to convert not so smart door into connected door that will tell you when it isn't locked. Something I'm using for myself because I'm really forgetful. Eagle-eyed of you notice that there is a couple of more boxes behind me. This is because I still have two Aqara hubs to talk about, and that's a subject for another video. So if you want to watch this, well, you know how YouTube works and how to get notifications, but for now, let's fire up the NodeRED and let's experiment with the sensors. These are all the sensors that I've got, and you notice they share similar features. There is a link quality with the icon that animates and changes the color depending on the value, and battery information available as a percentage as well as voltage. And now in the Aqara sensor I also have access to luminosity and the temperature, which is the temperature of actual PCB rather than room. Right now it's 19 degrees in my room. So this is the widget for Aqara PR sensor. You'll see last event in there as well, which tells you when the sensor was triggered. Now in NodeRED, the sensor connects via MQTT, and I have three different nodes that's coming out of it. One to set up the date when the occupancy is triggered. On the side you will see the messages. The occupancy sets to true or false, and that happens every minute. So when you trigger it, you get false, you get true, and then after a minute you get a false message. Now to send that information with charts, I have a chart set up, and lastly I have a very small script that splits the range of the sensor into 4 categories and issues a different icon, so you could see what's the icon strength is like, and also there is information about the battery that's being passed to this section as a template. Temperature sensor is very similar. It starts with obviously link quality and the battery information, but I also have included a switch between Fahrenheit and Celsius. The temperature sensor will report in Celsius degrees, but this switch will let your information flow into the charts and into the current temperature signal as Fahrenheit. So when you switch it, it won't change the previous values, but it will change the values moving forward. So I'm going to switch it over, and you'll notice that the temperature will raise up significantly because it's going to be displayed in Fahrenheit. In NodeRED setup, I've resolved that by simply using a switch to set a flow variable. Depending on the state of this variable, I recalculate the value of Celsius into Fahrenheit, and this way I can submit information to charts or to the dashboard itself. Information from the sensor itself, it's shown like this, and you will see that there is access to pressure, temperature and humidity. Now pressure it is hectopascals, humidity obviously in percentage, and temperature as I mentioned in Celsius. So that gets split into 3 different parts and sent over to 3 different charts. You start noticing that I can reuse some of these features between sensors. Now contact sensor also comes with a temperature chart, so you can tell what's the temperature of the PCB is. There is a last event, which basically a trigger whenever sensor is disconnected in a similar way as on my motion sensor, and a very familiar widget for temperature and link quality. Now that's being linked at the top as get trigger time and range format. So you can see I've just swapped contact, occupancy into contact, and a response to false, which is a state for when the sensor is open. If I toggle it and get the response from the sensor, you'll see what kind of response I get. And obviously once you close that, contact response is going to be true. Moving on, we have a water leak sensor, and yes, we're going to start with the quality of the link and the battery information, because why not? It's good to have it. As you can see, I've just licked the sensors and I triggered the water damage information. You'll also notice that there is a device functional message, and I'll explain that. I've mentioned that there is information about the battery, but additionally is the battery low, which isn't present on other ones. There's also a tamper and a water leak. Water leak is where the information about the contacts lives, and if it's true, it means there is a leak. And if the sensors aren't connected, obviously this value will turn to false. Information about tamper, it would be something I'd expect on the contact, not on the water leak, but this is basically means that the sensor itself wasn't flooded. And in a similar way, I displayed a range with link and battery information, and also the trigger as a last event. The last one is the vibration sensor, and there's quite a bit of information there. So let's get rid of the payloads and let's trigger that sensor so you could see the changes. When I drop the sensor or move it, you'll notice that the sensor, apart from the regular information about the battery and link, you'll also display the different modes of how it's been moved, shaked, dropped or tilted. But what's new is the raw data from the sensor itself, and you can see a angle or position, which is for X, Y and Z axis, and absolute values, which I think kind of state for acceleration, but I'm not 100% sure at this time. This is how that information is presented in a NodeRED. So you've got an action which contains the name of the action, vibration, tilt or drop, and follows by the information about individual axis. Now, in addition to that, vibration is going to have also strength, which you can use to define or filter out smaller vibrations and hopefully use it to your advantage. Information from individual sensors, it's being sent by get trigger time, and the information from individual sensor itself, and passed over as a template to display the values. If you find a creative way of using that data, let me know. As you can see, that was quite easy, and you can extract quite a bit of information from these sensors. Now, while I'm not so keen on the vibration sensor itself due to how slowly it responds, maybe you'll have a better, more creative ideas how to use it for your automation scenarios. Now, those flows that I've presented you with, they are available on the download in my article. So if you click through the description, you'll find a link to the article about whatever I just said, and you'll be able to download the sample flows and use it in your home automation, whether it's with NodeRED or Home Assistant. You take your pick. Now, if you're interested in what will happen next, then, well, I do not have a posting schedule, you probably know that by now. But if you are new, you know how YouTube works, I'm not going to explain you that. Many of other YouTubers probably did already. But I would strongly recommend you to follow me on any given social media if you want to get updates about what I'm doing, what projects I'm working on, and just in general get involved in the conversation and get some guidance on the projects. As for now, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'm definitely going to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye. At least once.